Hello and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk About, and this is now the official BikeSocial sofa in the official BikeSocial studio. With me today is Simon Toad Hancock's off of a recent Triumph Tiger 800 launch, and Steve Rose, BikeSocial boss man. But we're going to start with a couple of news stories breaking this last few days. Firstly, the British Superbike series is going to be sponsored by our governors, Bennett's Insurance. Pretty good news, eh?
Yeah.
Boom. Awesome.
And that makes BikeSocial the official digital partner, which we're not quite sure what that means yet. I think it's up to us to invent what it means.
I think we should all wear badges though, with it.
But I'm very excited about it because British Superbikes is great, and I've kind of blown hot and cold with it for a few years. But I've really come back to BSB mainly because I now live just around the corner from Cadwell, and Cadwell, in my opinion, Cadwell is one of those great British sporting events. It's like the FA Cup, it's like Wimbledon, it's like some kind of rugby match where they all kick 7 bells out of each other. It should be, it's one of the great kind of, moments of the British summer, and it's just, it sort of represents everything that's good about BSB because it's got that. It's a real family event, and there's a really good program of racing. There's lots to see, lots to do. Cadwell is an amazing place anyway. But to be fair, most of the BSB circuits are pretty good. Alton Park is an amazing circuit to watch out, amazing circuit to ride around. Silverstone, you always get good racing. Thruxton, they should have a round of MotoGP at Thruxton because it would just be amazing, wouldn't it? We'll pass over Snetterton for now, but I guess if you live there, you know. But it's just a Knock Hill, which is just where else you get to ride in the rain every year consistently and practice your wet work. It's a really good series, and it has got that sort of family feel, and it works when you go there. It works on telly because because all the races are on the same day, unlike World Superbike where you're never quite sure what day the race is on, and the rules are good. I don't understand the technicalities of it, but I think MSV who run it have got some rules that basically mean they've all got a control ECU. Is that right?
That's right.
And that sort of means that the racing's closer and better to watch.
I think that's a really good. It's a valid point, and I think that in terms of sponsorship, in terms of getting involved with the BSB series, we've almost timed it perfectly, by luck or otherwise. Last year, 2017, there was 10 different winners, and I think every manufacturer was represented on the podiums. Yeah. And it's just got such that it's got a quality about the closeness of racing. And the competition makes it so desirable, I guess, to watch or to visit. And you see the crowds. I went to Cadwell Park last year as just a regular punter, and it was heaving. Yeah, fine. The weather was on our side, but you get so close to it.
Yeah, I remember seeing you there.
It was a BikeSocial day out. It's the only round that I've actually gone to for like the last 2 or 3 years has been the Cadwell round. I think it's like you said because it falls on bank holiday weekend always. The weather somehow seems to sort itself out and not be British and rain over everyone. And it's just got a bit of a party vibe about it. It's a good event, a proper good event. I'd go there before I went to the cup final or Glastonbury or any kind of rugby or tennis or it's that. I know it's not quite like the cup final because nobody win the championship on that day, but it's one of those things you go there and just think what a day out that was. Says a lot about it when we went to the MotoGP at Silverstone and we left after 10 laps because it was a little bit processional and we just wanted to beat the crowds to get out because it's so horrendous getting out, yet stayed until the end of Cadwell. You
don't want to go to a race series, do you, or a British round of anything and think, well, I've got to leave early, I can't watch the end of the race.
Yeah. But you have to Silverstone.
What's also good about BSB is that there's I've already mentioned the competition, and you've got dare I say it, let's not say old hands, let's say the more experienced riders, and the cream will always ride with the likes of Leon Haslam and Shane Byrne, but you've also got the young guns too, and it's I don't know, it's the cream of young British talent with the likes of Brad Ray, Mason Law, Carl Ride, the Mackenzie brothers. They're all at sub 25, and it's the future, right? Yeah,
it's one of the things I'm actually quite excited about this year because I tend to watch it. I go to a couple of rounds a year. I watch it on telly, but I'm actually quite looking forward this year to having more involvement. So I can look into who are the front runners in the Superstock, who are the front runners in the Motorstar races, and just so who are these kind of next generation races that we should all be cheering for, because apart from anything else, it just makes it much more interesting, doesn't it? If you're there and you've got someone to cheer for in every race, you just enjoy being there more.
Got the new series as well, haven't we? The British Talent Cups following BSB for, I don't know if it's every round, is it? No, it's not every round, but it's following them for quite a few, so that's going to be interesting. Because that's more of a Red Bull Rookies take on it. One make series, level the playing field and see how they all go, so that'd be good to watch.
Yeah, it's coming good. So the other bit of news over the last week has been that Morecambe missile himself, John McGuinness, has signed for Norton for the TT this year. Big news. Do you think he's going to be competitive?
Yeah, I think he will, because he's John McGuinness, and you know he knows he's at a point in his recovery now where he's probably got a good idea how his leg's feeling, how his head's feeling, you know, whether he's in a place to do that or not. He's still got, you know, best part of 4 months before the TT starts. I don't think he's going to go win every race this year. I don't think he expects to go win every race. But I think he's smart enough and experienced enough that if he gets a bit of time on the bike before the Isle of Man, he'll use the first few races that he's there. He'll use the super bike, and if he's racing in the other classes, he'll get himself to a point where his body's right, his eyes in. I reckon you could put money on him for the senior. Everything lines up, and to be honest, even if he doesn't, you know, even if he doesn't win it, then I think the amount of data that Norton will gain for their bike, the amount of improvement that he can bring to their bike, just because there is no one that knows how to get a bike around the TT, and no one who knows how to set a bike up for the TT better than John McGuinness. You know, there are racers there who are probably quicker than him now. You know, Dunlop Hutchinson may be quicker round the island than him, but I don't know whether I always watch Dunlop, and this may be doing him a tremendous disservice. I always watch Michael Dunlop and think a huge amount of his speed is about his talent, and you could put him on my phaser and he'd probably finish top 10 and do 125 because he's just fast. And whereas McGuinness, I think, is now at that stage where he's just that bit more knowledgeable, and I think he's worked out how to set a bike up, and that's probably why he's still faster than maybe he ought to be, because you know it's not just all about raw speed. And so yes, I think.
Terry, do you reckon it's a PR stunt?
I think there's definitely smells a little bit of PR to me, because at the end of the day, if he turns up to the Rock and finishes, you know, lowly 10th place in the senior, then he can turn around and he can say, oh, the bike's still in development, it's this, it's that, I didn't have enough time on it, it was my injury. Whereas if he goes back onto and jumps back onto what was, you know, previously last year like a race winning machine, the only person that he can blame for not winning the senior would be himself for not being fast enough.
Yeah, but that bike's fast, all right. Josh Brooks did 131 on it.
Yeah.
The bike finished 6th and 7th in both the senior and the super bike races. And for that point, I think Josh Brooks is a good bet for a podium, because of what Steve said about the development of the bike. For Brooks, having someone, so he's had a year back again. He had a year out, didn't he? So he's had a year back again to get his eye in, to get used to the bike. He's now got a 23-time winner, 46 podiums. I think he's got
chasing him.
Chasing, but also helping him with the development of the bike, and also there as a bit of a, I don't know, comfort. I think Brooks, honestly, I think he's going to be his podium.
So you think Brooks could outshine McGuinness?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a bit of a romantic when it comes to the TT, and for what it's worth, I'm a big fan of John McGuinness. I like him and the bloke, and I like him, the talented rider. You know, we as a group have spent a bit of time with him, and I desperately want to see him do well on that bike, but I think that Josh Brooks is going to be the main benefactor of the McGuinness return.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you two have got a wager, £5 each, and I'll just bet that he's going to finish lower than top 10. That's it, deal, done.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll know, you know, when they get to the island, when they've done a bit of practice. The biggest challenge, I think, for McGuinness, and we were talking about this before, weren't we, is how is he going to get time on the bike before, you know, because it's not like if he was on a Fireblade, he can just enter a couple of races in super stock,
BSB or something like that.
you know, just to get his eye. So he you know, he'll get time on the bike, he'll get testing, he'll get some circuit time, but he's not going to get any competitive circuit time probably before he gets to the island.
Because last season, didn't Dunlop did the first couple of BSB races, didn't he, on the Bennett Suzuki? So
yeah, but that's eligible for the rules of BSB, rather Norton isn't.
Do you reckon they get any kind of dispensation to run it?
Who knows? I probably think he's more likely to be testing at Castle Combe that's about as extensive as his pre-TT test will go.
Not massively.
No.
Anyway, let's move on. So, recently, Dave, you've been on the Triumph Tiger 800, which is new for 2018.
Yes.
Now, Triumph are pretty good with a range of Tigers, be it 800 or 1200. They've usually got a fair few in the range. How many have they got this time?
There are 6 bikes in the Tiger 800 range. So they go up from the base model XR, which is 9,100 quid.
Good memory.
And that has it's not got a lot on it. So it's base model in every which way. It's got wheels. It's not got the TFT.
It's got cast wheels, I expect. So XR range is
all the road range.
On road.
Yeah.
And XC
is the off road. And it's pretty basic. Goes up in a few steps, and you get to the top level road bike, which is the XRT. That comes in at 12,300, I think. Probably down there. And then you go onto the off-road range, which is the XCX and the XCA, and they come in sort of 11.5 up to 12,450 quid. And they're both the hardcore off-road versions.
So you went to Morocco. What did you ride?
We did day one on the XRT, the top spec road bike, which was really nice, very smooth, nice engine.
How was the weather in Morocco?
Cold. Freezing. Don't think North Africa is warm at this time of year, because it can be. I mean, at some nights it was like sub-zero.
You had to cuddle up in a tent with 8 of the journalists.
I had my own tent. I was all right on that respect. But the bikes were great. They handled it all really, really well. The roads in Morocco were awful. It is the land that health and safety forgot completely. We went to go on about a 30 or 40 mile ride, and we got down to a river crossing where there once was a bridge, and the bridge had been completely washed away. So what ensued then was like a 4 mile detour across like a muddy, rutted track. And I was on the road bike at that point, and it was fine. It was great. Day 2 was the day that was all off-road, basically, where we were hammering through the sand dunes north of Marrakesh, probably about 60 or 70 miles, something like that. And it was proper good. Yeah, I'm a complete novice off-road. I'm rubbish. And it got me to the end of the day, and I kept up with everybody else. We were with Nick Plum, who's a Dakar racer, and Felipe Lopez, who rode Triumph's Tramontana thing, and yeah, did everything that I needed it to do.
So is this relaunch? Is it just equipment? Are they basically updated the equipment, changed it, or is it a new engine, new chassis?
It's got 200 changes to engine and chassis. And you know, when manufacturers say that, it'll be, well, now we're using
200 parts.
Now we're using an M8 nut instead of an M6 or an M8 bolt. But no, they say that there are 200 different components within the bike, most of them within the engine. So they've reduced a lot of the inertia within the engine, so apparently it's more free revving. I did notice that the engine is really lively. It loves living up in the red line. It's more like a 4 than anything else.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday with Simon Hargreaves, one of our contributors, and because I am equally cynical when a manufacturer says it's got 105 new components in the engine alone. I always think, well, how did they miss out 105 components in the old one? And B, where do those 105 new components go? Has it got 50 camshafts? But anyway, it turns out I'm wrong. Simon was explaining this very kind of carefully to me, that he was saying on the Tiger Explorer, again, same thing, they've made a thing, it's not the new components. Actually, what they've done was they've lightened the crankshaft by 3 kilograms, they've done this, and they've been able to do all this because they've now got new electronics that change the fueling, and that completely changed the character of the bike, because that new fueling technology allowed them to do all this stuff in the engine, made the gear change better, made the just made the whole bike handle better, turn from side to side better. So actually, me being cynical, I shouldn't be. It's he's right and Triumph are right, and I should just shut up about it.
Well, a lot of the guys who'd ridden, I wasn't lucky enough to try Tiger 800 before we went on the launch. It was all a bit late notice, but a lot of the guys who were on the launch as well, who'd ridden the old one, got off it and said it is a lot freer revving, it is a lot easier to ride, and it is physically overall, regardless of the internals, it's a lighter bike than the old version.
Yeah. And we forget, that it's easy for us to see these press releases and go to the launches and be a bit cynical, but actually, Triumph have got a team of engineers who are working with every electronic update and all the stuff that's available to them, and not just Triumph, the other manufacturers. you know, and each generation of these bikes should be better and should be easier to ride, and they should be making more use of all this stuff, and we should be glad they did, even if we don't see a radical change in it's a brand new engine or it's a brand new chassis. Maybe we're unrealistic to expect that.
One final thing on it is I posted when the review got posted, there was a few comments got down to the bottom, and it was people just going £12,000, whoa, it's too bloody expensive. But I went on to, what's the biggest competitor for the Tiger 800 is the F800, isn't it?
F850 GS.
I went on the website to, not for the F850, for the F800, and sort of spec'd it so that it got the same specs as the top spec Tiger, which was the one that was 11,450 or something like that. And it is cheaper than the BMW. And because it's a triple, it's got a smoother engine. So if you are going to be touring, it's going to be nicer to ride because it's silky smooth. The throttle, the connection on the fly-by-wire throttle is absolutely pucker.
Yeah. And it is really well equipped, isn't it? I remember I did see that it's got heated grips and heated seats on. 2
heated seats, heated grips, cruise control with you can change the speed on the handlebar, 6 riding modes, including Crazy Off-Road Pro, which just turns off everything. It's got the screen. I said this on the launch, said it in my review as well. The screen is phenomenal. You can ride along at 75 miles an hour, the screen on its highest setting, with your visor up, and it's completely no buffeting, no streaming eyes, no nothing.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That was really, really good, really good.
Yeah. Even the Goldwing, which we were riding a couple of weeks ago, the screen's smaller than the Pan European, but in the similar kind of weather conditions, although not Morocco, same thing. About 70 was about as fast as you could ride with your visor still up. Whereas Pan European, I've done a lot faster than that on the Pan European with the screen fully up and the visor up. Okay, so while you've been in Morocco, and we'll talk about Michael's recent trips in a minute, I've recently been riding Honda's Cross Tourer and Yamaha's Tricity scooter in the freezing cold in Lincolnshire, which is kind of my fault because I'd rather be in Lincolnshire than Morocco. But actually the Tricity was really interesting for me because we're all getting excited about the NIKEN, which is coming, Yamaha's 3-wheel NIKEN, which is coming along later on this year. And the Tricity, the 3-wheel Tricity scooter uses a similar sort of front end technology. Obviously on the NIKEN it's a lot kind of bigger, heavy duty, because it's a much more powerful bike. But I was just keen to ride the Tricity just to see what a 3-wheeled scooter feels like, because I've ridden the Peugeot's MP3, and I've ridden the other, no, it's not Peugeot, it's Piaggio MP3, isn't it?
That's it.
Sorry, and the Peugeot Metropolis.
That's it. And
they're very big, heavy, quite cumbersome things, whereas the Yamaha system on the Tricity is much simpler, much lighter. And I was talking to one of the guys from Yamaha who said, just try it, and you'll get an idea. And it seemed like any system that's got 80% more front end grip, this seemed like the perfect time of year to try it. So
the NIKEN, they're claiming 80% extra grip, are they?
Yeah, apparently the reason it's not 100% more is because the front tyres are smaller. I think they're 15-inch front tyres rather than 17-inch front.
So the contact patch is already smaller on each tyre.
Apparently, I can't quite work that out. I can't quite visualise it, but apparently that's right. But even so, 80% more front end grip. Effectively, what you're getting is it's like almost like a mechanical traction control on the front. So you've got traction control on the rear, which is electronic. It almost gives you that kind of, that extra grip. And on the Tricity, what was really interesting was the more you ride it, it just feels like a bike. It doesn't feel like a 3-wheel scooter. It just feels like riding a 2-wheeler. It's really light to use. It steers really easily. It's really narrow. You can filter on it. You can get through traffic in exactly the same way as you can get through on a bike. And it just, on kind of -2, -3 Lincolnshire rural roads covered in icy mud. You can't go riding like you can in summer, but you can ride sort of like you would in the wet, and you feel like you've got as much grip on cold icy roads as you'd have on a wet summer's road. And that was really interesting for me, because you think if that's how it is now, that system in the summer on the dry road is going to be
awesome.
Phenomenal. And it really does just feel like a bike. I've seen a few people, when we put the NIKEN stuff up from the Milan show, there's a lot of comments on social media about, it's just it's not a bike. It is a bike.
It does feel like a bike.
It feels like a bike, And I don't know whether Yamaha will ever get to this point, but it occurred to me on the way in this morning that not only is it a bike, but it's a bike that potentially could have 4 discs and 4 sets of calipers on the front, which means not only will it grip, but it should stop like nothing else.
Well, I rode the Tricity, and I only went onto the A47 and down to Castor Benz, and I hadn't used the brakes properly all the way down there, and I got to the end of Castor Benz to get back onto the roundabout to go back down the A47, and I thought I'd try an emergency start, pulled the brake, and my eyeballs nearly popped out.
Yeah.
It literally stopped, like there was no fuss, there was barely any dive. I couldn't, and it was wet as well, and the front 2 tyres just gripped, and it just literally came to a halt in, well under half the time of a normal bike.
It's really stable, and it's it's not like it does lean and does flip. It's not like on the Peugeot and the Piaggio, you've got a lock, so you can actually when you come to a halt, you can lock the front end solid, can't you? So it doesn't tilt anymore. The Tricity's not like that. If you just walk away from Tricity, it will fall over.
Yeah.
But it's just when you brake, just the fact that you've just got that extra wheel there, you can brake harder, and it just feels. I know what you mean. It feels really stable. It's going to be fascinating to ride the NIKEN.
Did it take a while to get used to get confident in the front?
No, not really. It took. I did a little bit of riding around the car park because the car park was even icier than the road, and I just wanted to see, not if I could crash it, but I wanted to see just what it felt like on those kind of conditions, and it felt okay on those conditions. And no, by the time I'd done, a few figure of eights, it was fine. By the time I actually set off and went out on the road, didn't even think about it.
So by the time we get to try an 850cc 3-cylinder proper motorbike with 3 wheels, where's the difference going to be? Is it going to be as controllable?
I think it's going to be a bit like when we first got traction control on motorbikes, and we all spent a summer trying to get the light flashing on the dash. And so instead of riding like the considered, well-trained, smooth motorcyclists that we'd all spent 25 years becoming, we spent that first summer with traction control just going, trying to like idiots, because we wanted to see if we could make the traction control work. This is going to be the same. The first summer on this thing, we're all going to ride like idiots to see if we can crash it, and then we probably won't crash it. Most of us won't crash it, and then we'll gradually, as we have done with traction control, we'll gradually change the way we ride. And I think we'll open the throttle in different places. We'll lean in a different way. We'll approach corners in a different way. It will change the way we ride, and we will be able to ride much quicker and much safer, and take different lines around corners than we do now. And I think if you rode nothing but a NIKEN for 5 years, you'd look back in a few years' time and just go, how did I ever get that whole thing round a corner?
So all the roundabouts of the UK are going to be abused, aren't they? Because people are trying to get their knee down.
It's going to be the summer of understeer.
Or trying. At what point do you get understeer? Is
When
it
does
going
it
to
slide?
be below 60? Really?
It's going to, and it's really interesting because we've got at the moment, we've got an awful lot of stuff coming out that is like this. We've got at various points. The electronics on bikes are getting so good. We've got Yamaha with this very unelectronic, very mechanical way of solving a particular problem. We've got the thing we're going to talk about in a minute with the Africa Twin and the DCT gearbox that Honda is getting better and better with each kind of incarnation. And there's all this stuff happening now on bikes, and none of this is happening on sports bikes. It's the kind of sports bike market is going off in this one direction, and everything else is getting all this tech and doing other things.
Apart from the V4 Ducati and the R1M.
We've already had that one.
Technology laden.
We've already got this is the test then. Okay, so the NIKEN's got more grip. You can brake later if it's the same as the Tricity, because on the Tricity you can brake stupidly late. So here's the test. The NIKEN is a dressed up MT-09 with 2 front wheels and the special suspension and all of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Why don't we get an MT-09 and the Tricity? And I know it's not about speed, but let's see if that extra grip is actually worth it, because it's a little bit heavier than an MT-09, isn't it?
MT-09 and a NIKEN.
And a NIKEN, yeah, sorry. And take them on a track and actually see which one is quicker.
I'm sure we won't be the only people thinking of that. But
do it.
Yeah, there's got to be. It'll be interesting to measure it with a professional rider on a closed circuit.
I think it's only a question of time before Stuart Higgs and MSV introduce a one-make
series.
BSB support race. Get rid of those sidecars.
I just think it would just be brilliant. Can you imagine?
Chris Walker's probably already asked if he can join this non-existent race series.
Yeah. So the Tricity. I mean, it's not a NIKEN. but it's really it was a really interesting insight into what we might be getting in a few months' time. And what I've been doing now, I have also been riding around on our Honda. Appear to have left a cross tourer in our shed and don't seem to want to collect it, which has been lovely because I've spent a lot of time riding around on that. And the cross tourer is a really interesting one because it's one of those bikes that it's not a GS. It's not an accomplished off-road adventure bike. It really is it's a pan-European for people who don't want to admit that they're ready for a pan-European yet. And it's a lovely, competent, comfortable, touring bike that's great to because again it's got DCT, and DCT is the best thing ever if you've got pillion, because it just eliminates that kind of head banging when you change gear. And the first few times I rode it, I was thinking, oh, it's all right. I remember this. I always feel a bit like this when I ride a cross tourer. And I've ridden it probably most of the last 2 weeks when I haven't been on electricity, and I just really enjoyed it. It's a lovely bike to ride, and it's one of those, it just grows on you, and it grows on you because it's big and comfy and stable. And there's a word that I kind of hit the other day as I was riding down a muddy road, and I mean a proper muddy, wet, nasty Lincolnshire winter road, and I was riding along thinking, composure. That's the word. And I've never bought a bike ever based on the fact that it's the most composed. I never even considered buying anything. It's just not it's not a word that comes into your mind. But I was kind of going down this horrible road, plastered in mud, and just going far faster than I realised I was going. And it's a road you've got lots of visibility, and I was just thinking, this is just great. I feel so secure on this bike, and I'm enjoying it, and it just rolls into corners, and it's easy to ride. The throttle response is great, and the more you ride it, the more you think, actually, this is lovely. I'm not sure I'd pay list price for one, but I'm not sure anybody's paying list price for a cross tourer at the moment. But it is a bike that's and in this weather, I mean, it's just gets. It makes you sad how filthy they get and how horrible it gets, particularly when you do the kind of distance that I'm doing at the moment. But it cleans up beautifully. It takes a bit of time, but it cleans up really well, and it's built.
It's a lot to clean.
It's a lot to clean. Use the whole jar of. I finally broke the glass on my vintage bottle of S-Stock 100, which I've had for years and years, and never found a bike yet that's been dirty enough to need it. Because I always just bucket and sponge, fairy liquid, whatever John Milbank says. But this, I looked at it the other day and thought, this is the time for the S-Stock 100, and it used the whole bottle of S-Stock to clean it, and a bottle of S-Stock is 15 quid, 16 quid.
Jeez, it's an expensive wash. I found it really big. Obviously I'm quite small, and I enjoyed riding it, but I didn't enjoy coming to a stop, because where the foot pegs are is right where my ankle needs to go to get to the floor, and it's quite wide around the waist, which meant that the stretch to the floor for me was quite a long way. So I'd end up having to just lean it over that little bit too far, where the weight's just a little bit too far over. But I love the engine. I thought it was really super smooth, loads of grunt, and the power delivery is, like, the torque curve on it is really well sorted. I like the brakes, and I thought the suspension was fab, even though it's VFR 1200 suspension, isn't it? It's not adventure bike suspension, but it's just got massive risers on it. But I thought that was really good. And the only thing that I didn't like, and I'm sorry, Mr. DCT, wherever you are, was the DCT. It just, I don't know. I've never ridden a bike that I've gone, that works, and it's perfect. But the rest of the bike I loved.
Yeah. And talking of DCT, you just come back from Spain?
Yep. Where it snowed. Remarkably.
It was chopping it down, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were about an hour north of Malaga in the hills, and Honda had selected that area specifically to show us the Honda Africa Twin Adventure Sports, and they, like the Tiger, we had 2 days planned, one on road, one on off road, and all they were going to do is change the tyres. So that's what we did, and we arrived and it snowed a lot, so the plans changed. But anyway, we got out on the road, we headed south, back down toward Malaga on the road, just so it brightened up a bit and we could have some time on the dry roads.
And this new Africa Twin Adventure Sports.
Yes.
It's taller.
It's huge. It's just take an Africa Twin and supersize it. I mean, the Africa Twin is not exactly a small bike to begin with.
No.
But that was the 2015 model. When it was reintroduced as a 998cc parallel twin. So and now 2018. 2016 is when it was introduced. So it's been around for 2 years already, and the Adventure Sports and then the base model Africa Twin has also been updated.
Okay.
So it's 30th anniversary of Africa Twin this year, and yeah, so they've come out and they've given the standard bike a bit of an overhaul, and they've introduced this new Adventure Sports, which is the supersized version. So
what are the differences in the standard one? Is it a kind of fueling, ignition, traction control thing? Or
yeah, it's all of the above. So they've given both bikes. They've given throttle by wire. Yeah. Certainly the Adventure Sports has got longer travel suspension. It's taller. It's 20 mil taller at front and back.
Bigger tank.
Yeah, much bigger tank. 24.2 litres now, which is over 5 litres bigger than it was. And I got 54 mpg on the test, which is pretty reasonable, and I think that equates to about 275 miles per tank, which is blooming good going, really. And it's comfortable too, actually. I mean, considering the height, it's
what's the seat?
The standard. The seat's got 2 settings. 920 is the standard, but you can put it on the lower setting at 900 mil.
So 920
still high. That's still higher than anything.
Enormous.
Even on its lowest setting, that's higher than anything else in that area.
So that's a 36-inch inside leg, pretty much.
Yeah. I'm 6
I've got
foot
no
tall.
chance, have I? I've got no chance. Unless somebody brings out some stiletto riding boots, I'm stuffed for riding that.
I can't wait for a review of those.
Yeah, please RST. Can I ask a question?
Anything.
Because you had the old Africa Twin as a long termer.
I did, yeah.
Did you go on the launch of the original Africa Twin? Okay, but you had an original one as a long termer, and you rode it off road, didn't you? You went green laning on it, and you're saying that they've increased the front and rear ride height, and it's got more ground clearance. Did you ever find that it was lacking in the ground clearance department originally?
No.
So why have they made it taller? Doesn't this just rule out a massive proportion of short asses like me who can't jump on them?
Yeah, well,
and I'm really good.
They've certainly supersized it all right, and I think because they give it a bigger tank, they had to make it look a bit more buxom in other areas as well. I know. So yeah, it's got new throttle by wire. It's got a flatter seat, even though it's taller. It's got different type of luggage capacity. They wanted to make it much more rugged than the original Africa Twin, or the base model, let's call it.
That's interesting though, because again, we were having this conversation the other day that for me, even the standard Africa Twin sits in a very different place to things like the GS or Cross Tourer. The standard GS, it is capable off road, and if you can ride off road, you can do amazing things on one. But it's not what I think of as an off road bike. If I was going to go off road, I wouldn't automatically go and buy a GS or a KTM 1290 or a Capo Nord or a V-Strom. Whereas the Africa Twin, I looked at and thought, if I were an off road rider, it's not, the Africa Twin isn't trying to be a touring bike. It's trying to be a what we used to call a big trailer in the old days. So it already felt like it was slightly apart from that group. So this is even more. Yeah,
it's more extreme. Certainly, you're right. You take all those manufacturers and others, and they seem to have got in their model range. They've got a quite a base, or let's call it a road version, a GS, not a GSA, an Exxon, not an XC.
1290 Adventure S as opposed to R.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
the Enduro version, there's the CS, and so on. And this is just Honda's version essentially. You're right. The original Africa Twin is not exactly shabby off road. And I did that Dave Thorpe school in Wales, and we did a bit of green laning. Yeah, it's perfectly competent and capable to do off road. I'd say it's much more practical for on road than the Adventure Sports is, just because the Adventure Sport is so tall. It is so, and the weight's high because of that big fuel tank. And it, I'm at 6 foot tall, I could get both feet flat, and it does make a difference. 12,600 quid for the manual version, and you pay 950 quid extra for the DCT box.
And which would you go for?
Incidentally is 10 kilos heavier.
Wow.
10 kilos.
See, I went on the original launch of DCT when they did it on the VFR 1200, and I'm sure I remember them saying it added 5 kilos to the VFR, so that's a lot of extra.
243 wet it is for the manual, and 253.
Yeah, that's a lot. And this may end up being a separate one of these, but I think that there's definitely we need to talk about DCT because it's one of these things that everybody who rides it seems to have a different opinion, and I find it fascinating because I went on that original launch of it on the VFR 1200, and version 1 of DCT was, you could see where they were trying to get to, and and it had some advantages. In the standard D mode on that original bike, it was difficult to ride, and I just assumed that D meant difficult because it changed up too soon, and it changed down halfway through a corner. It was the algorithm was completely the person who programmed the algorithm rode in a very different way to me, and I couldn't make it work in D mode. In sport mode was better, but the thing I loved about it was in manual mode, you no clutch, and you just flick up and down on the little paddles, and it was great. It's like the quickest quick shifter you've ever used. The second generation, which appeared on the Cross Tourer and is still once on Cross Tourer, was better, but again, still not quite right, and I still used to use it a lot in manual. The third generation, which is on the Africa Twins, is much better. It just gets better with every generation, and I think the NC 750s, you can get a DCT version of that as well. What was it on our Cross Tourer the other day, just as out of interest? Well, I say out the other day, the week. I basically did a couple of days with it in D mode, and I did a couple of days with it in sport mode, and I did a couple of days changing gear manually, because I just wanted to see the impact on things like fuel economy, and also how long it takes you to get used to it. And what was really interesting was I rode it in D mode for 2 days, and I hated it for the first 10 minutes, and then I just forgot about it, and I just rode it. And because it's a 1200cc V4 engine, it's got enough torque to, you can sit in D, and it doesn't really matter actually if it changes, because the gear change now is so slick compared to the first one, that even if it does change down halfway around the corner, you don't notice it, because it's not like changing gear on a manual bike. And I just, once I've got used to it, I just rode it and forgot about it. Sport mode actually now annoys me more than D mode, because it hangs on to the gears for a little bit longer, and you sit there in 5th gear when ordinarily you'd probably have changed up into 6th by then. Manual's still great, I still like it, but why would you when the auto's so good? And from a fuel consumption point of view, it actually used, I do 110 miles a day, and I usually, so if I get about 10 litres, it takes about 10 litres, 11 litres, that's sort of 45 mpg, which is what I usually get. It used, in D mode, it used 11.5 litres, in sport mode it used 10.4, and in manual it used 10.7. So, the litre between the three modes over 110 miles. There's not really a lot in it. I mean, you could say that just 3 or 4 overtakes on a, that'll probably use an extra litre.
Certainly on the Africa Twin that I used for the long-term mode a couple of years ago, by the time I got a couple of months into the loan, I tested all of the different modes, and there's 3 sport settings, and I'd always keep it in S2, the middle of the 3 sport settings, just because that was my preference. And like you say, I didn't want to be in 6th gear at 15 miles an hour. No. Equally, I didn't want to be in 5th gear at 70 miles an hour. Yeah, no. I wanted that happy medium. I think that's kind of where they were at with offering that kind of range, is that they do fit, or they do suit each type of rider. Certainly with the adventure sports, they've added an auto blipper, which sounds awesome, because they've changed the exhaust on it as well. Right. Refinements to the airbox, changed the exhaust and the auto blipper, add the 3 together, and it makes riding the DCT on the road much more enjoyable, especially when you're overriding the DCT in manual, so you've got it on the flippy buttons. Yeah, it's great.
That's the child in you talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it didn't that's the sports fan in me. But I didn't get bored of it. And certainly, and then we went off-road. I tried DCT first, then I tried manual. I thought to myself, I prefer manual because I've just got that extra bit of instant control as and when I need it. Yeah. I'm not telling the bike, and the bike's then going, okay, I'll react now, and that all of a sudden that's half a second.
Was that having a DCT bike in manual mode, or was that having a full manual with gear lever and clutch?
So I tried the DCT bike in both S2, S3, and also its own manual version with the buttons, and then I tried the manual bike as well. And yeah, just because I wanted that instant control, I preferred the manual immediately. I went back to the DCT box and I thought, do you know what, I could really get used to this, especially on the override, especially when I was in control of the gears. Yeah, I just wanted, so if I wanted like instant momentum, or if I just wanted to, give it a little blip up around a corner, over a crest, up a hill, whatever it is, I wanted to be in absolute sharp control as opposed to waiting for the DCT to just go.
That's interesting, because I'm not really an off-road rider. I'm terrified of riding off-road, and whenever I have to do it, it's just an exercise in survival for me. But in my head, I see that moment when you're going down a slippery slope, and you're thinking, I don't want to go down too many gears. certainly don't want to have to start thinking about clutches and taking my foot off the foot pegs and doing it. So the idea of a gearbox that will do all that for me, that just allows me to wave to the crowd as I go down there, it seems perfect to me.
There's a crowd?
Oh, there's always a crowd.
Oh, they follow you, don't they?
Yeah,
Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, mostly up front. But it's really interesting how it's evolved. And I don't know, you rode it. You've been the cross tour and you rode the NC 750 last year, didn't you? With it on?
I need to ride something else that's got it, so I can put it to bed or fall in love. I think I need to try something else that's got DCT and see how it works out.
I'm really keen sometime, as soon as we can, really, to get something together where maybe BikeSocial invites a whole load of our readers to come along somewhere like Bruntingthorpe, or even maybe just do it here on a road route and get a selection of DCT bikes and just give people, because I know when you talk to the guys at Honda, their biggest frustration is that, like a lot of these things, that there's a lot of chatter about it on social media, and people who've never tried one but maybe read the odd road test, and it's so my experience of it is that you need to do a few miles on it, because the experience when you first get on it, the experience is quite odd.
Alien.
Yeah, not having a clutch lever, not having a gear lever. The time I really fell in love with it was when I was late back from a ferry, and I got off the ferry and I was late home, and I had to get home, and I had to get all the way around the M25 because I was stupid, and it was rush hour and everything was conspiring against me, and I remember filtering in traffic without a clutch lever was just the best thing ever. It was so easy to just not have to worry about all that stuff and just look where you were going, just find the gap, and it was great. But it takes a while to get to that point, I think.
So DCT's been around a while now, and it's obviously exclusively Hondas, but do you think that other manufacturers are missing a trick by not copying it or doing their own versions?
I think so. When I got it, the moment I got it, and I realised how good it could be, it felt to me like how it must have felt in the 1920s when they went from hand gear changes to foot gear changes. And I was lucky enough, in inverted commas, to work on a classic bike magazine a few years ago and rode a few bikes with hand gear change. And when you've ridden a bike with hand gear change, and you realise the effort of shutting the throttle, which is often a lever, not a twist grip, and then operating a foot clutch and pulling this handle, and there's a massive flywheel going down so the thing doesn't stall. And you can only imagine that when they went from that process to someone saying, well, you just pull this little lever in here and snick this thing with your foot and let it out again, they must have gone, that's witchcraft. And for me, DCT was as revolutionary as that. It's, why would I bother with this ridiculous process of going like that anymore when someone just does it for me? And the most effort I might have to put in is to flick a couple of paddles like that.
So but basically lazy.
Well, yeah. That's nowadays everything, pretty much everything. Every new bike's got a quick shift anyway, and an auto.
Yeah, but
so that is redundant.
But they're not all very good, are they?
Not all of them.
The one we had on the Fireblade last year was beautiful. It's up and down quick. The autopilot, everything works as it should. And in fairness, they don't call it a quick shifter, but the long-term R1200 RS BMW that I ran last year has what they call gear shift assist. And it does change gear without you needing to do all that, but it's such a mechanical process that you just think, every time I change gear, I'm braking this bike somehow, and particularly when you go down the box, and I just ended up using a clutch all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I like the whole thing about me riding a bike is that I hate driving cars because I hate mixing a throttle and a clutch with my feet, and I like this whole thing that you're mixing it with your hands and changing it with your feet, and I like the action of it. Don't take that away.
No, it's just a Luddite. Because changing gear is rubbish. Once you stop changing gear, you can concentrate on doing all the much more enjoyable things about it.
We'll agree to disagree.
I think we could talk about this for a long, long time, and if we've got any viewers left, then feel free to add your comments in the section below. And also, if you want to give us some inspiration for anything else you want to hear about us talk about, then again, feel free to let us know. But for now, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.